Okay, it's time to take a look at this word, backup, something that I'm sure that you very rarely do. I wouldn't be surprised if all you understand what we mean by a backup. At the end of the day, let's consider your school, for example. Your school has loads and loads and loads of files. Files that you're using all your work that you do on. You've created a lovely PowerPoint. It gets stored on the main server, and it needs to be backed up. And backup is data that we refer to files that are currently in use. On a slightly separate aside, that's in use. I'm going to put not in use. Not in use data we refer to as archiving. Now, archiving might be, for example, where a supermarket has lots and lots of data about product sales, and the data they have maybe for today and this week is in use because managers might want to do it, but they've got data maybe from, let's say, 2008 about product sales. Now, that data is of no use, but they hold it in an archive because although archives are very rarely used, occasionally it's useful to perhaps go back through the data. And something that, although not on the specification, you consider this at A-level, is that supermarkets do something called data mining, where what they will do is they'll trawl through all of their archive data and all the data they've got to see if they can spot any sort of trends. Maybe if someone buys one particular product, they often buy another particular product, and that's kind of how they will often lay their shops out. But what I wanted to differentiate here is that backups, we tend to back up things that are currently in use, but occasionally we will take a backup of the backups, if you like, so we can archive them and store them away. You never want to lose your data, but there's not a lot of point in backing up and continually restoring all of the data. The file size would be massive and it would just take too long to do. So backing up is really the stuff that you're currently using. I suppose a good example is that maybe if you're at home, you might have done work in year 7, year 8, and you're quite proud of it. Well, you might want to back that up, but you might put it on a CD and stick it away in a cupboard somewhere, so that just in case, because you're not really using it at the moment. You want to back it up every single day. I said we talk about your school. Let's think about your school. Let's think about some of the issues that we need to cover within the concept of backup. Well, number one, how often should your school back up their data? I suppose it's a bit of a rhetorical question, really, because I think I kind of know the answer. For a school, most schools would back up at the end of each day. And if you've ever had an experience where you've done some work and then delete it, and you go to your network manager, you might say, "When did you do it?" And he said, "I did it earlier on this morning." I said, "Can't help you then." But if you said, "I lost some work," and when they do it last week, "Oh yeah, we can get that off the backup." So a school will tend to back up daily because the reality is that most of the stuff that's created during the day is not of absolute importance. For a school, it's daily. For something like a bank, well, a bank wouldn't back up daily because they do millions of transactions every single day. So the question of how often for a bank, well, to be honest with you, they're probably going to run with what we call instant backups, which means that, say someone's at a cash point, there's supposed to be a cash point, tiny little diagram, I don't know why I did it that small, and of course they withdraw some money. So that would need to be stored on a server, we'll call it server A, but at the same time the data would also be stored on server B. I suppose in some ways it might well be that you don't have the connection from the cache point to server A and B. It might well be the server, like the cache point, data goes to server A first of all, and then that's backed up sort of instantly to server B. It may be instant, it may be every few minutes. I would imagine with a bank it would probably be instant. But different people require different backups. And if you think about it, how often do you back up your work? Well, daily? Probably not necessary, maybe once a week or something like that, but certainly you want to do it instantly. You're not going to go, "I've done some work, I must plug in my memory stick and copy it straight away." You don't do that all the time because you'd be at the computer all day long. So how often is something that we need to consider when we're backing things up. Another question that we want to consider when it comes to backup is where's the location of the backup? Now the reality is you don't want the backup in the same room as the computer that you're backing up, because if there was, for example, a fire or a theft or a flood, something like that, a natural disaster, or theft, not so natural disaster, someone on the rob, then if you've got your backups next to the computer that you're backing up, chances are the fire's going to burn them both, the flood's going to wipe them both out, and then someone's going to nick them both. So you're kind of foolish to put your backup in a location, the same location as the thing that you're actually backing up. But let's just dwell on fire for a moment. One of the things you should always do if you're doing backups, if you're going to be using a medium like a portable hard drive, which you probably wouldn't use in a school they might use tapes, and we'll come on to the types of medium in a minute. You want to make sure that if you're going to be backing up and you're going to put it onto a small portable medium of some description, then you want to put that backup inside a fireproof safe. And once again, if it's flood and theft, that might suggest the location of your backup. If possible, you might want to put it into a separate building. I can give an analogy for the students at my school. We actually have our backup devices are actually stored in an art department, which is in a different physical building to where the network manager sits with all the servers in our school. So if we were hit with fire, we'd hope that maybe it would just take out either the backups, well, if they're on a fireproof safe, they should still be safe, but if it took out the main system, then it wouldn't also take out the backups. So a good idea, if you can, is to have your backups in a separate building. What you do at home, let's think about backups at home. I guess the reality is that most of you probably don't back your work up, and I really would advise you to, and I'll be honest with you, I don't do it myself, which is kind of dumb really, because I have lost work in the past, and I've had to have work corrupted. It's very unusual for it to happen, but it does happen. And really you can invest in, and we'll come on to it in a moment, a portable hard drive. They're dead cheap. You want to be thinking about, backing your work up at home. And if you don't do it, try and force yourself to get into the habit of backing things up, because you never know when your computer's going to be corrupted, your hard drive's going to fail, or if someone's going to nick your laptop, whatever it's going to be. So if you do get the opportunity to back things up, then try and force yourself into the habit of backing your work up. The thing is, we've been talking at the moment, I use the word medium here, and I'll do some more on the medium on the next slide. But what I mean by the medium is, what device are you going to use? Well, you might be backing up all the time, but you may find that, let's say, your laptop dies, or there's a fire and you lose the actual primary device that's storing everything on it. Well, if you've been backing up, one thing you need to do every now and then is test that the medium is actually working. There have been cases in the past of people been backing up to tapes, and the tapes have just, they've tried to put them back in, they didn't work, and so they lost everything. That has happened in the past. So, what we're looking at is backup is the process of backing up, but you've also got to consider the concept of disaster recovery. And disaster recovery is a little bit more than backup. It's backup plus a reinstall. And part of the disaster recovery program is that you should always test that whatever you're backing up onto actually works. There's one final thing that I'm going to throw into this one, and this word is the word who. And what I mean by that is that if you're going to put a backup strategy in place in a business or in a school or whatever it's going to be, you have to say to someone, you are responsible for the backups. Somebody has to be given who is responsible. It's incredibly important that if you put a backup strategy, or actually I should say a disaster recovery strategy in place, that you make sure that somebody within your organisation is actually made responsible for testing that everything works and everything has been backed up fine and dandy. Right then, we've talked about the principles of backup. The next key question is, well, what do we back up to? I did mention the word a moment ago, the word medium. And there's quite a few choices available to you, but they have their limitations. Number one, DVD. DVD, if you watch Phone Jacker. 4.7 gigabytes is realistically, I mean, you can actually get dual layer discs, but a single layer DVD is going to hold 4.7 gigabytes. Now, that's fine and dandy, but if you've got a lot of data and you're using multiple DVDs to do that on, there of course is a cost involved in actually just buying the physical DVDs. And of course, if you want to archive things or make lots of backups, you're going to need lots and lots of copies of these discs, and you certainly probably don't want to buy rewritable discs. You don't want to overwrite your backups or overwrite your archives, do you? The reality is that the problem also with DVDs is that if you're writing to a DVD, there's quite a lot of time involved, in time to burn, I think we'll put there. There's quite a lot of time to actually burn the data to the DVD. And if you've got lots and lots of data, that's just not going to be practically possible. The other problem with DVDs is that they can be stolen. They can be lost quite easily as well. And to be honest with you, and this is the key, this is such an important word, I'm going to put it over here, and we've dealt with it on previous videos. Whilst you can encrypt a DVD, the reality is that most people wouldn't. So if you have sensitive data that you're backing up onto a DVD and it is stolen, chances are it won't be encrypted, which means that the person that's nicked your DVD can actually get to your files. But a DVD is one medium in which you can back up work onto. Let's move on. The next medium, of course, is our favourite, the memory stick. And I would imagine if you ever back things up yourselves, this is probably the device that you're going to be using. Now, nowadays, you can pick up about a 32 gigabyte memory stick for around about £15 if you buy them online. They're not particularly expensive. And of course, you tend to find that the ease of use, they'll work in most systems. At the end of the day, they just need a USB port to plug into. You also tend to find that might cause a problem if you need a USB port, that is a little difficult to back up things like phones and tablets. It's not really useful for backing those up. You can get special connectors to do it if you wanted to, but to be honest with you, it's not very practical. When it comes to data security, we've mentioned before, once again, encryption. I'll just put a line to it. It's quite easy to encrypt a memory stick and password protect it as well. And that's something that I would strongly urge you to perhaps investigate having a look at. Moving on from the memory stick, then we're now looking at these portable hard disk drives, or external hard, HDD, portable hard disk drives. Now, it's quite normal nowadays to go online and you can buy yourself a 3 terabyte hard disk drive. That's an awful large amount of data. That's 3,024 times 3 is 72, 3,072 gigabytes. I think you'd struggle to find that, to create that much data in your lifetime, to be honest with you. But they sort of have the same problems as, well, not so much with memory sticks. Memory sticks are quite easily lost, but I think portable hard drives are more likely to perhaps, stolen. I don't know. What do you think would people be more likely to nick? A memory stick? Or it's easier to nick a memory. People leave them in computers and you go, oh, I'll have that, thank you very much, put it in my pocket. But a hard drive, ooh, that's a bit more tempting to steal. I'm not saying you should go out and steal these things, because that would be incredibly wrong. But I think that, to be honest with you, these two types of devices have the same sort of issues, really, in that, once again, they require USB connections for a hard disk drive, so difficult to back up tablets and things like iPads and things like that. But they offer a little bit more data, and of course, they can be encrypted. The only thing that I would suggest that is a slight advantage of the memory stick over the HDD is that a memory stick uses what we refer to as solid state memory. Okay, and a portable hard drive will basically use inside it a disk, and it spins. It's just the same as the hard disk you find inside the computer that you've got. It's exactly the same principle. And it is possible for these to be more likely to be damaged. So I would suggest that the advantage is you can get a lot more data on one of these things here. But I don't know what I did that. The disk inside it has the ability perhaps to be more likely to suffer from damage. I don't know, we get damaged USBs all the time at school, but it's something that you can talk about. Okay, moving on, we've got the tapes. Now, tape systems, they have advantages in that you'll find that, once again, it's incredibly easy to encrypt data. When it comes to the security of them, they're quite handy because you can drop them into your fireproof safe. And that's quite a useful thing to do. They're also, compared to buying sort of lots of hard disk drives, they're actually relatively quite cheap. I don't know the current cost of tapes, but trust me, a tape that stores the same amount of data as a hard disk drive is going to be cheaper. And the reality is, they are incredibly suitable for the principle of archiving. Very, very useful to if you want to archive your data, to actually drop them onto tapes, and then you can just, you can make a backup once a month of all of your old data, and you can throw it onto tape, and you can put that away. Once again, I think the big problem is that I mentioned here with the CD. Let's pull a line down here. There's an element of time. If you want to back things up onto tape, it takes quite a long time to write it. But of course, the main issue with tapes is that they can be damaged quite easily. And I think the reality is that backing up onto tape is probably not a format that most companies and organisations are using. Certainly at my school we used to use tapes. We've now moved over to basically nothing more than a giant portable hard drive. We've got something like an 8 terabyte, I think, Buffalo Workstation, I think it's called, or Terra Station. You can Google one. And that's what we use to back up, and that's primarily because it's just quicker and it's more convenient than having to take tapes out and reload them and put a new one in. But of course, we're now into the realms of, well, what about if you have 100 terabytes of data? You can't back that up onto any of those. You'd have to keep replacing them, swapping them out, and backing a little bit up at a time. So how do you do that? Well, if you have a server with 100 terabytes of data on it, how do you back that up? If you have a server with 100 terabytes, quite a lot, but just pretend one computer, 100 terabytes of data. How do you back that up? Well, the answer is with what we refer to as a mirror. Basically, if you've got a server with 100 terabytes of data, get yourself another server with 100 terabytes of data, and then you can set it so that the server will copy to the server. Okay, so the 100 terabytes on this server over here can be set to run overnight or every minute or however you want to do it, and it can copy that data. So of course you actually have basically two machines. And in the big business, to be honest with you, that is the way that people are predominantly going to be backing their data up. Okay, there's not really much else to explain. I suppose you could argue once again they're all using these disks here, so you do have the potential for corruption or damage. But to be honest with you, if you're a biggish organisation, that's what you're going to use to back up your work with. Alright, well, I think that's pretty much it for backups. Any questions? No, I can't hear you. That's right, so there's no point asking, really, is there? But there you go.